Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a straight talk session on talent and how the role of General Counsel is evolving. Moderating this session is Karl Fernandes, Vice President, Head of In-House Practice Group Vahura, and he is joined by Anuja Bose, Head of Research, In-House Practice Group Vahura, and Erwan Carpentier, Senior Vice President and General Counsel, Mindtree, and Mr. Nilanjan Sinha, Head Corporate Advisory, Godrej and Boyce. May I request Karl to please, and all the panelists to get wired, and it'll take a minute.
You don't have it.
Yeah, that's 45. Yeah, thank you, sir. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We have Nilanjan Sinha, who is the head of legal for Godrej and Boyce, and corporate affairs for Godrej and Boyce, and we have Erwan Carpentier, who is the global GC for Mindtree. My colleague Anuja, in fact, so before we start, Anuja, in fact, is going to, run us through a mini kind of a presentation that should give us a sense of trends that are happening within the in-house space. And from there, actually, then we'll take over to having a detailed discussion about the changing role of a general counsel.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? Am I audible? Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I will just quickly take you all through Vahura Insights, which is something that we've been working on for the past 1 year. This is part search and consulting team has been working on this together to put it across. So this data is again for the year financial year 2016, and I will just take you all through the methodology first. Okay. So as you can see, this report, we've come to the conclusion of this report by looking at primary as well as secondary sources. So we've looked at professionals with 4+ years of experience. We've also looked at certain details about these professionals. Again, this is primarily legal professionals because that's what Vahura we do over here. So we've looked at details like their names, their years of experience they've got, the PQE as the years of experience, the company which they have worked at, the industries which they've moved from, and also most importantly the compensation level, right? At what compensation they were at in the previous company, followed by the change when they have switched jobs. Okay, now the next one. So here we are. The first one is industry analysis. As you can see, the 3 sectors which is hired the most are financial services, technology, and pharmaceuticals. Financial services, we've seen 12% of professionals moving from in-house to financial services this particular year, and within financial services we notice it's mainly the NBFCs and funds which is hired. And within the banking sector, what we have noticed is there was a lot of churn in the banking sector, primarily because of the whole restructuring of various departments in this particular sector. Then moving on, the next one is technology. And in technology, what we've seen, technology comprises of software, hardware, and also IT/ITS. So in India, what we have seen is that it's mainly the MNCs in India which has hired drastically, not so much the Indian companies which has hired this particular year. And then pharmaceutical. Pharmaceutical is particularly interesting because in pharmaceuticals we've seen that there has been 51 deals which has been announced, close to which was worth 4.6 billion USD, which is a significantly large number. And Indian companies are beginning to, Indian companies wanting to do work in-house, they basically have a larger Indian teams, legal teams, as a result of which they have done majority of the hire, not so much the MNCs. Pharmaceutical MNC companies mainly have a lean team because they have a greater presence at a regional level. And then the next one, no, saying on this one, and the interesting one is the last one, where because at Vahura we also do law firm hire, so we keep a track of that. So what we have noticed majority, it's actually 23% has been people who've moved to in-house has been supplied from law firms. This is particularly interesting because this just shows that nowadays in-house is hiring a lot of professionals from law firm, particularly because of the fact that they have specialized skills. Then the next one. Next slide. Okay. This is the hike analysis. So as you can see, we've actually noticed this is a big number. Yes, we did analyze. So as I mentioned, or maybe I haven't mentioned earlier, the sample size for this is basically 218 professionals who we've tracked moves. So they were, as I mentioned, Vahura people hired by Vahura as well as using external sources. So 37% was the average hike that professionals received. And this was particularly interesting because moves from in-house to in-house as well as law firm to in-house received an average hike. As you can see the slide, the one at the side, they've received an average hike of 37%. This is particularly, again, the reason being that now in-house team becoming more specialized and the role of a general counsel becoming broader and entailing not just legal, beyond legal, they want compliance, tax and other basically other professional skill sets, as a result of which they are willing to pay that premium in terms of recruiting. And then that brings us to our next slide, which is a gender analysis. So as I mentioned, we also track the male-female movements within in-house space. We actually noticed, though there was parity in terms of compensation and the hike percentage that people received, what was surprising is the fact that women with between 10 to 15 years of experience, we saw them being employed only 19% as opposed to men being 27%. Versus, and also like between 15 to 20 years of experience, women were only 9%, whereas men were basically 22%, which still continues to show that even though in terms of compensation, women are getting there, but not so much in terms of reaching at a leadership level. Also an interesting finding over here was we just done a quick search on the top 25 Forbes Indian companies, and how many general counsels over there were men and women. We actually noticed out of the 25 general counsels, basically all 3 were only women, which is shocking in a certain way, but obviously I guess India is still getting there, so eventually we will. And that brings us to the end of this short analysis, but we do have Vahura Insight, which will be coming out in first week of May. So in case you want a detailed version of this, please write to us and we shall get that to you. Okay, thank you. And now over to the panel discussion, which is here. Sorry.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you, Anuja. So just keeping in mind what we just seen, and that's a very good analysis. So Nilanjan, just in terms of, we see 23% of the hires that were made in-house were from law firms. So any thoughts on that? I mean, do you look at specialized talent? Is like M&A litigation that the trend is that a specialist hire comes from law firms, or is it just general hires?
Yeah, thanks. So I think I would sort of divide my response in sort of 2 parts. One is looking at it from the employer perspective and the corporate's perspective, and
Okay.
and then looking at it why I think is from the lawyer's perspective. So from the corporate perspective, and I want to sort of start with a little sort of story which I read. And this is about the Japanese fishing industry.
Okay.
So, the Japanese fishing industry was going through this phase where they had to go long way to get fresh fish. So they had to bring really long, big trawlers. So by the time the fish came to the shore, the fish was not fresh. And Japanese eat, fresh fish. So then they innovated. So in the trawler, they created a little pond. So they would catch the fish and put it in the pond. And that trawler would come back to the shore. The fish would be alive, but people were still not happy with the fish because the fish were, not active. They were sort of morose because they were sort of in the small pond and they were just sort of moving around and they became complacent. And so then they said that they did the innovation where in the pond they put a baby shark. And when they put that baby shark, so when the fish came back, they were all very active because they lost some fishes because the baby shark would eat some of them. But the rest of them stayed alive and were very active. And there was very, very high, sort of demand for that fish. So I think I go back to I think that's something which I think was happening in the from the corporate side. I think in-house lawyers, and I'm myself an in-house lifer, therefore in-house lawyers tend to become very complicit, and you need a predator. So you need a predator in the team who's going to keep you active, who's going to push you to the limits, because you see, fundamentally the people who are working in law firms have been trained to be, get business, execute, and so therefore I think one of the fundamental reasons I think it just ups the game for the company. Beside the fact which Anuja actually also talked about is that more and more there's been a trend that you want to build in-house capabilities. So therefore you want to go to law firms only when it is very complex, very big, very high stake, etc. But otherwise you would like to sort of really have in-house capabilities. So I think to my mind there are the two aspects which why corporates would sort of look at, and from my perspective. From a lawyer perspective, I think what is happening is that, again, I think we've seen the trend of, and there's nothing wrong, I'm saying they're perfectly capable, but lawyers becoming partners, associate partners, and all of that very quickly. When I was young, then the partner was something which happened many, many years back. Now, one of the fallouts of that is that once you get that new visiting card with partner, you also have a huge pressure for getting business.
True.
And a lot of people are just not being able to handle the fact that I think when people are in firms and working in large law firms, etc., and the institution itself draws a lot of business, but once you have to do it yourself, you think the picture looks very different. So I think there's huge competition. A lot of people are sort of getting tired of that and coming in to corporates because of that. Also because I think a lot of people we talk to also say that in a law firm you are doing one specialized activity. You're not being able to understand the entire commercial reason why a transaction is done, or have any. So I think the other thing which interests a lot of lawyers to come in is that. I think fundamentally to me, it's, that's what I think is the reason for the trend, and it's a very happy trend because the other thing is that while there's 23% here you show, but there is also a reverse trend which is happening. There's also a reverse trend. A lot of GCs now getting into private practice. Yeah. There is a lot of people at every level, at senior level, at mid level. It always was happening at the junior level, but at mid and senior level also, people getting into private practice. So I think once your survey looks at it, I think there is also another aspect to that, where so it's a very happy interpolation of cross-polarization of talent.
And Erwan, any thoughts on that? Because since you have been in an international role, so Erwan used to be the head of legal for Europe for Wipro, and pretty much his perspective from an international GC would be.
Yes, sure. Coming back to Nilanjan's point, I'm not sure it's working. is it? No. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now it's working. I think probably another reason could be willingness to in-source skills. And if you take, for instance, data privacy, and all of you know that data privacy is a subject of at least this year and for sure next year. And if I would have the budget to probably hire one lawyer, I would probably pick someone who knows data privacy in Europe and in-source this person and having this person in my team to work along with me for the next, let's say, 2 years to implement data privacy policy in Europe, in US, and of course indirectly in India. Coming back to your question, so your question is more differences between what we see as GC in India versus abroad. Good question. I would say, and that's of course my own opinion, it doesn't mean that it's true. I would say today in India, and given the discussions we've been having since this morning, I would qualify GCs in India as GCs 2.0 versus probably in US and Europe, we see GCs like 3.0 in a sense that probably, and again, I don't pretend that I'm right, in India, and I include myself, we are still looking for our role and defining our role to understand how far we should go. Shall we get compliance underneath legal? Shall we go on a board? Rather than they have already moved to the next step, I would say in Europe and US. And in order to do so in India, probably I see 3 things that we should do a bit more. And probably some of you or all of you are already doing that, is don't be afraid to speak out. I see probably legal heads, GCs in India still again looking for their own position and how they should interact with CEOs, with top managers. And of course, as we've been saying since this morning, it's very important to position yourself to be more influenced in the organization, and I would say be proud of yourself. It's a very good sign that we are saying that our role is increasing. So don't be shy and speak out, because if your willingness is to move to a director's position, it's not something that will be gifted to you. It's something that you will have to grab and show that you can bring more than legal advices. So that's my first point, to be a bit more external and don't be scared to speak out and give your position. The second point I would flag would be probably to market yourself a bit more, and I include myself as well. To give you some instances, when I joined 2 years back, of course, Mindtree is an organization which has 16 years of experience, so I was not the new guy in the house. So I've brought some, ideas and instances which can be, very symbolic, but can have an impact internally, like sending a monthly newsletter to the entire organization on one subject. And again, as we said this morning, you have to draft it in a way not to sound too legal. So you involve your team member. Every month a different in-house lawyer has to draft a newsletter, and then you send it, you put the name, you explain what the person has been doing in the company. Then another idea that I'm sharing with you is we are working on that. We are implementing an intranet legal portal in the organization to give more power to our own internal customers, and I think it's quite easy to do, and it's a different activity. It's not legal per se, but then you have to step back and to say, okay, where do I go? What kind of documents I give access to the salespeople? Can I share templates? Can I share NDAs? If I do that, how do I protect and secure that the documents they will share externally are the right documents, the right versions? Then what kind of information they can manage to get themselves like this? I can save time for myself and for my team. Like, for instance, they can download the certificate of incorporation in the legal portal rather than to call you every day to get it. Same with templates of NDAs. So that's just an idea I'm sharing with you. A third idea that I'm sharing with you, which in fact didn't work, and that's probably another thing, is don't be afraid to fail as well. The first year, I've tried what I've called the legal help desk, in a sense that I've noticed that in my team we received many minor questions from people internally. So we decided, if I recollect, once per week to have a help desk somewhere in the organization where people can proactively come and ask their question, let's say only on Thursday morning from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. It worked a bit for a few weeks, then after a while less and less people came, but at least it's something we have tried, and I'm sure you have many other ideas, and probably you have already implemented some of them. So that's the second idea. Market yourself, be visible. We do monthly legal meetings. We invite people. We invite, let's say, the head of R&D to do a session to us. We invite the head of the foundation of Mindtree to do a session for us. But we do the other way around as well. So we say, okay, next month, the monthly legal meeting will be at the floor of the sales head for this business unit. And then we will go at the floor in the next building, and then they will see us. Because I think what is getting more and more important as a GC, as an in-house lawyer, is not to sit at your desk and wait for the work to come to you, but be proactive, go to the others, speak with them. And I do encourage my team to do so, because we mentioned automation. If you want to fight automation, the best way to do it is to work on communication, to work on interaction with people, to meet them proactively. And the very last tip that I'm sharing with you is, and again, it's probably a difference if I compare with Europe and US, is do more trainings. Do more sessions. It could be sessions where you invite 20, 30 people in the building, but you can do video trainings on negotiation, communication, integrity. All these matters are very important, and the more you are seen, the more you are able to reinvent yourself, the more visible you will be, and the management will of course respect that.
Okay, thank you. That's in fact a good insight, because even when we hire for a lot of Indian companies, what we have seen is that the law departments are soon turning out to be a center of excellence. So just to add what Erwan is saying, in fact, we know this one large corporate that works just like a in-house law firm, and they tend to build each of these group companies for a particular transaction or very strategic transactions, and that's how the corporate legal team in fact runs. And we have in fact requests from GCs to hire somebody at a mid-level to do a lot of knowledge management work as well. So the corporate legal team actually is really evolving, and thanks to the GC's role. Just to add, some of the requests that we get is, apart from the regular law work, legal work, apart from legal CS, the new thing that's really picking up is public policy and corporate affairs. So there's a demand for general counsels with a lot of public policy and corporate affairs experience. I mean, today, if you see in the country, we just have 1 or 2 general counsels, in fact, who do a lot of corporate affairs work. Globally, MNC's corporate affairs, for some of the US companies, actually have corporate affairs as part of the general counsel's office. But in India, it's a new thing. And just to, in fact, blend in, I think, Nilanjan, how do you think that the role of a GC is changing more to a business lawyer, generally, because overall?
Well, I believe it always was a business lawyer.
Okay.
Because
it's much more beyond law right now.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think that was the fundamental distinction between an in-house lawyer and a private practice lawyer or a lawyer from a law firm. So I think it always was a business lawyer and sort of the basic baseline. But But I guess what is more and more sort of evolving is, the other things the GC or the team does. So one of it is that the fact that you are now more and more, you see general counsels, heads of legal are part of the senior management team.
Yes.
And therefore you are not only just a lawyer, but you're also, part of the business, policy, strategy, goal, etc.
So positioning is key, you're saying?
Yeah, so I mean, therefore, the role, sometimes you sort of struggle, and it's something which people who do it well are also the more successful GCs, is that people who've been able to understand the business and not wait for a legal, aspect to be discussed, but to actually be able to jump in with a proactive view with respect to business, which is because, like one of the CEOs once had observed, he said that, in the whole, conference table, everybody, has got an agenda. So the finance person has an agenda of cost control, the sales person has an agenda of increasing the sales, the production person says that I want to, ensure that my people are not stretched, etc. He said the lawyer is the only person who has no agenda at the table. So therefore, you are, he said, I want to listen to what your view is, because you don't have an agenda which is apparent. So therefore, you are today being sort of, and the difficulty is that you're not trained in law school to think like that. But today, because you've got a seat at the table, you are having to really to take that role. The other is what the other one which I think is becoming quite key, as I see, is project management. A lot of legal team, general counsels need to have a lot of project management skills. And I think whether you're doing an M&A transaction, whether you're doing anything like that, you need, or even just a implementation of a large, enterprise, ERP solution. It has very, very complex contract. It has sort of functional involvement. A lot of times, the legal or the GC is required to sort of be a good project manager. The other, I think a couple of other things which are, I think I see happening is crisis management. Which some of the companies which you can, even in India, you've seen companies have gone through huge crisis, and the GCs have had to step in and really take charge and say, give comfort to the organization. Don't worry, I'm in control. And and to be able to really do that, I think that's the other trait I see. And I have seen this a little more in MNC than in Indian companies. But I guess it's also in Indian companies. Is a lot of times GC also is required to be a torchbearer of culture.
Correct.
So you really roll out culture, and I'll give you like an example. So when I was in GE, we had this Health Ahead initiative, so which was basically simple things like be healthy, stay safe. So the global GC would really took it upon himself to tell every organization, every part of the discussion to say, you got to remain healthy, including things like sending out messages saying don't text while you're driving. And like a big mail saying that don't do that, it's sort of, and he gave his personal anecdotes of what he did. So a lot of times, when people get caught up with their, so you lend a supporting hand to an HR team, which is sort of fundamentally the CEO and the HR would be rolling out this, but the GC have seen playing in multinationals a lot of these. So these are some of the areas which I think which are sort of, as I said, business you've got to do, dhanda to karna hai, nahi to nothing. So therefore, you have to, that's what I sort of think. I know other than, of course, the bread and butter stuff about contract management is becoming a big thing. You've got to have digitization and all of that. So those are sort of given, to me, that those are baseline.
So I just have one question on that. Do you feel the organization, right, as in when you're, because now as we all know that it's becoming, a GC's role is becoming more of a business lawyer, does an organization actually do enough training and actually encourage that in a certain way? Because when you're a general counsel, you're the boss, right? So you don't really have anyone who you could be learning and new things, or is it just like on the job training, you figure it out as and when?
So I think the companies who take that very seriously, who want to see their GCs successful, make GCs go through formal training. Again, I'm sort of taking an example of GE. There is a sort of a, I think 1.5 month training where you are taken through after you are, when you are a part of the senior management team, where they sort of take you through a training of how should you be sort of reading balance sheets, including things like how you should be dressing, things like how you should be, talking to a press, and on all of it, marketing. They have simulation courses, they have, role play. So they, organizations, I think, which are serious. So I can say this from my personal, experience, that people who are companies which are serious and want you to actually speak at that meeting would take that effort and invest in you to do that. But otherwise, you are, a lot of it will depend on, as I said, your personal, sort of skill trait to be able to speak up. And it is a reality that only the lot of successful GCs are the ones who come across as, and I've been amazed with some GCs. I've seen how comfortable they are with numbers and how comfortable they're being able to, talk about, the business and the numbers, So those are the ones who I think who really make it.
Interesting. And of late, in fact, just about recently actually, we see a lot of GCs, in fact, they're very particular about the reporting and the positioning of the role. Now, just in terms of, in your viewpoint, in fact, Erwan, you have worked with Indian companies as well, and you being an international GC, how important do you think the reporting is, just in terms of, being part of the strategic vision of what the promoter has in mind?
Of course, it's very important. We talked about that this morning. It's a very important point. So I'm just allowed to talk for 20 seconds and then they turn out the mic. Yeah. It's very important, I think, but more than the reporting itself, I think Navneet mentioned that this morning is, what kind of role and impact you want to bring to the organization, in a sense that it's not because you report to the CFO that your role is suddenly less important than if you report to the CEO. It's what do you do with your own role? Where do you want to go? How impactful you want to be? And for instance, coming back to the business role of a GC, to the extent that you report to the CEO, we can assume that you have a more business role. Then how can you be more enabling function? Again, some instances that we have implemented in Mindtree, we have tried to reduce the number of processes. So we work with business team, we work with different kind of departments, because as again we mentioned this morning, time to market is increasing. So we work a lot on that. We try to simplify our templates, terms and conditions. We try to simplify much more the approval matrix that we may have in the organization. We empower people as well. So we have a program where we have decided that underneath a certain value of one engagement, we give some authority to different kind of people to take their own calls. And like this, it's better for them because they don't need to come to us. They don't need to come to me as a GC. They don't even need to come to the CFO, because they know that, for instance, to move from 30 days term of payment to 45, just their own manager can give an approval internally and then it's closed. So we try to optimize and reduce the time to market. We do some sessions as well with salespeople to explain how important it is to sell Mindtree templates outside. So we have done a survey internally, and I've shown to them that when we work under customers' documents, we need on average 8 to 9 approvals. When we sign up under Mindtree terms and conditions, we need 3 approvals. So of course, all of that will resonate to them because they understand that the more they are able to explain Mindtree terms and conditions, the faster they will be able to sign the very first deal or engagement with a new customer. So again, coming back to your question, reporting is important, of course, from organization perspective, from positioning of the GC, but it's not because I appoint you as, GC reporting to the CEO and you don't know how you should interact with salespeople, you don't know what you have to do, then it doesn't make sense. So it's more, how you grab the role itself, how proactive you are, how inventive you are.
Understood. Thank you, Erwan. I think running out of time, we have no time for questions, but feel free to reach out to us. We are just outside. Thank you, Erwan. Thank you, Nilanjan. Thank you, Anuja.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for your lovely time.